Welcome to Nava Podcast with Leah Cardenas and Stella Pashos.
Let's explore the true essence of Nava.
Nava embodies the concept of beauty in all its forms. It represents the inner radiance that each woman possesses and the unique qualities that make her truly remarkable.
Our mission is to share the stories of inspiring women who are making their mark in the areas of fashion, health, lifestyle, and family. Our aim is to curate meaningful conversations where the journeys and experiences of our guests can inspire you in your own life.
We started this podcast to create a space where everyone can feel beautiful, inspired, and empowered.
Nava is not just a podcast, it's a celebration of the incredible women who have shaped our lives and the countless others who are yet to share their stories.
We can't wait for you to join us.
Hey girlfriend.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good. I'm excited. We're coming to you guys from Florence's nursery.
Yes.
In progress. It's looking really beautiful. We're super excited to see the reveal.
Yes, we'll do a little video for you guys to see it. But tell me, what's been happening with you at the moment?
We actually just got back from a camping trip to Wilson's prom. I'm just going to say, yeah, that's the one. I'm just going to end at Wilson's Prom. It's a beautiful kind of national park in Victoria, and our camping spot was right on the water. I shocked a lot of my friends and family when I started going camping. I don't look like your traditional camping gal. However, I have gotten on board because it's a really wholesome experience and time away with loved ones where you can just sit and connect over a campfire and just get to know each other on a deeper level and spend that quality time that you don't get to otherwise when we're rushing around trying to, get around our day.
Yeah.
Have you ever been camping?
Just at school. I don't feel like it's my thing.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't want to camp with school people, sorry. In the nicest way.
Oh, for me, it's just the creature comforts of bathrooms and I hate bugs.
But yeah, I get the bugs thing. It's not really my vibe either, but we compromise in relationships, Leah.
Yes. And the pictures you send me of the locations you've been to are just stunning. Yeah.
What have you been up to?
Well, David is overseas in Japan, so I'm single parenting at the moment. Thank God for mum and mother-in-law. I would not survive.
Sending strength.
Yes, but I don't know how single parents do it. It is so tough. I take my hat off to you guys.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like it's hard enough with both parents, let alone just one.
Yes, plus being pregnant and with a toddler is hard too.
How have you been feeling? I know you haven't had the smoothest of pregnancies.
Yes, still sick, but I feel like it is easing off at the moment.
Touching wood.
Fingers crossed. Fingers crossed. But in this episode, we talked to Courtney from the INARRA. She is so lovely. I loved having the chat with her. She has amazing fashion sense and has curated some beautiful things in regards to maternity and postpartum and motherhood, and there's so many great articles and things on her website. What was one of the takeaways for you?
I just love when you get a glimpse into someone's world, like when they would go shopping, like what would they pick?
Yeah.
Especially with her blog posts as well, like what do they care about? And she shares the stories of so many incredible women. But for me, I just loved like taking a peek at her page, and I want to buy everything that Courtney curates.
I know, and she's so stunning.
Yeah.
For me, I loved the bit where we spoke about refinding your identity as a mum and how common that is, that you just lose that sense of self and trying to regain that. Yeah.
I feel like with any big life change, you obviously go through this re-identification process of like, who am I without X? Or, if it's like a job or a change in a family dynamic, it would be really challenging to find you again.
Yeah. Well, hope you guys enjoy it.
Today, we are so thrilled to be introducing Courtney McIntosh, the pioneering creator behind the INARRA, a leading hub for maternity fashion and lifestyle. Although I had a look myself and I don't have children, but I want everything that you post. So it's not just maternity,
Focus. Courtney's inspiration sparked from her own pregnancies, where she sought stylish yet practical clothing that mirrored her pre-pregnancy taste. And this journey led to the birth of the INARRA, a brand committed to empowering expectant and new mothers with a curated mix of high-end designer pieces and everyday essentials.
Thank you so much for coming on, Courtney. I can't wait to talk to you about all things fashion. But as our listeners know, we like to do a quick, fun 90 seconds with so they can get you to know you a little better. Are you ready?
Sounds good. Let's do it.
Okay. What's the most surprising thing about becoming a mum?
Oh, goodness. The expansion of love, I think. And on the other hand, the frustration that you can feel at the same time and how they can go hand in hand together.
Definitely.
Duality.
What's your favorite way to relax when you have a moment to yourself?
Oh, if I'm completely honest, I might just sneak off to the bedroom, lay on the bed and just have a moment, depending how much time I've got. Otherwise, I might try to do a Pilates class or get out in nature. But otherwise, it's usually just starfishing the bed and just taking in that millisecond I have to myself.
This one is for me. What's your go-to family dinner?
My kids are terrible fussy eaters. So it will usually be, if it's a Friday or a Sunday night, usually a pizza night. Otherwise, something involving pasta or a barbecue.
Nice.
We keep it simple in the McIntosh household.
What's your favorite family tradition?
Favorite family tradition. First thing that pops to mind is Christmas pajamas on Christmas Eve. And then we play a Secret Santa game, Bad Santa, where we do like a swap and steal game at Christmas. It's what we all look forward to, creeping up into December every year.
So cute. I love it that Isla's getting a little bit older and we're doing all the Christmas traditions and she's
So
like
fun.
loving it.
Best.
So fun.
Yeah.
Last one. What is the most challenging part of motherhood for you?
Most challenging part. Be the push and the pull, I think, knowing where to direct my time and the self-doubt that I have, I think. I think that sometimes means that you're doing a good job if you're doubting yourself and you're second guessing yourself. But I think constantly asking, am I bringing up my kids the right way? Am I doing a good enough job? Am I showing them enough love? Just kind of wanting them to be the best version of themselves and hoping that I'm doing a good. It's a big responsibility bringing up a human, hoping that you're doing a good job that they can then go forth well into the world when they have that time. But yeah, I think the self-doubt is a big challenge that I face.
All right, I'm going to do one more because that one was heavy. What's your best mum hack?
Oh, best mum hack: snacks, lollies, bribery, anything that gets them to where you from A to B. I'll take it.
I think we use that for our partners as well, to be honest.
Yes,
Not just
yes, for sure.
So let's jump into it. Can you tell us everything about the INARRA?
So the INARRA was born. It was an idea I had when I was pregnant with my first child, Johnny, who's now nearly six. It was an idea that was born purely out of not knowing what to wear when I was pregnant. I was the first of my girlfriends to have a baby. I was relatively young, working in a corporate job, so had to upheave, very much a corporate lifestyle, still socializing, but my body was rapidly changing, had no idea what to wear. Fashion has always been something that I've loved, growing up as a girl, looking towards fashion magazines, and it's very much a part of my identity, and I have a lot of fun with it. But as soon as I fell pregnant, I just didn't know where to look, and so I found that there was a huge gap there that spoke to women. I didn't align with maternity specific clothing. So fast forward a few years, the INARRA kind of evolutionized into a content platform that not only had elements of fashion weaved into it, but also provided relevant modern day content to the modern mother, something that can be looked at as an inspirational point of view, not only from a fashion aspect, but also what we're talking about as parents, content platform for the modern day mother, I would say, short and sweet.
I can totally relate to the headspace you were in when you fell pregnant and with your first, and you just didn't like pregnancy fashion. And that's actually when I came across your page. I was like, I refuse to buy, I apologize, maternity clothes because I just found they were not my style. I was trying to find stuff that wasn't actually pregnancy that I could wear. Thank God that oversized fashion is in because I'm rocking it at the moment.
Yeah, for sure.
It was a really nice space to see that there were other people that think like me, and really appreciate fashion. And it doesn't have to go out the window when you have a bump.
No, it doesn't. And I think there's so many ways around it, and times have changed. I think the maternity um, based fashion definitely served a purpose for some time. But it's also coming back to the cost per wear thing, and people also look at clothing now and the longevity that they can get out of it. And you made a good point there, the oversized clothing. And I also think there's something around fashion sizes in Australia. Women have this kind of innate fear of going up a size or wearing a size that's not their usual size. That just needs to be eliminated and eradicated because there's no truth to that. I think, rather than numbers on sizing, we should formulate something else. Because there's no shame or harm in going up sizes. It's, whatever fits your body is what's going to look good on you. And I think squeezing into a size that doesn't, necessarily fit, it's just not worth it, both for your mental capacity and, what the self-talk that goes on in females' head is crazy how we talk to ourselves. But yeah, I think people want to see, invest in really good quality clothing that's going to be able to outwear them much longer than maternity wear would. Yeah, and I think there's more talk coming to light about that, which is really cool. I think brands are starting to cotton on that there's this new era and age of mums who are working women. They have their own disposable income. They will still want to look good and feel really good. And how can brands come to the forefront and support them? And it takes time to sift through. Non-maternity brands, I suppose, like streetwear and designer brands to find pieces that suit. Which is what I struggled with as well. I didn't have time on my side to sift through pages and pages of online e-commerce brands, finding something that might fit and then potentially have to return it. And sometimes it can be a bit of a gamble, but also have fun with it. I think, if something doesn't fit, who cares? Yeah, I think just having more fun and less fear with fashion, I think, is key when pregnant. And I feel like postpartum is kind of when it really hit me. That's when I really, really struggled. But as a first-time mum, you never really know what's ahead of you and how terrifying postpartum can be, which was my experience, because your body drastically changes and you're so tired and you feel like shit. And navigating, your tummy's not tight and taut anymore. It's empty and there's still a lot of skin there, and how you dress that big engorged boobs. And that's when I really struggled, much more than pregnancy. But again, it's just being a little bit inquisitive and curious, I think, about fashion and having fun with it is what's key.
Yeah, I think the next generation is doing a lot better than us at not kind of like putting ourselves in a category or labeling and really fit into a size. And I feel like once you can find something that fits you, and like you said, like even tailoring things or just getting it right with ignoring the size, because we can feel, like, okay, you were a size X and now you have to go up a size, or some people go down a size, and that's not in their ideal vision of themselves. But you can still look at it in a different light without the pressures that we are used to.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I completely agree with that. And it's, just not being so hard on ourselves. Women are amazing. We're beautiful creatures. We have so much to offer, let alone give birth and raise beautiful babies. I think just being a little bit kinder is always key as well.
What would your advice be to the women that aren't as kind, that have maybe perhaps gone up a size or are just not feeling like themselves? Where do we start in terms of what our new wardrobe looks like?
Look, I would say it's easier said than done. That comparing yourself, I would actually say just put down your phone and go off social media for some time. There's
Mm.
I I often struggle with that a little bit. I love to have time off social media, but it rarely happens. I think now, since in the past year, since the INARRA has been live, I find it really hard to separate that boundary. But I often get caught up in the comparison toxic train, and you can go down a really steep hill when you get in that train of thought. But for women who aren't feeling great about themselves, it's just kind of knowing that this too shall pass, I think, is a big one. And look, if you feel most comfortable in your active wear and a slouchy loungewear shirt, if it's winter, wear that, but buy something nice. Invest in that little
Yeah.
thing that's going to be a little bit nicer, or, new spare pair of trainers. Get your hair done, something that's really going to perk you up, with a spray tan, little things that can make you feel tiny bit better about yourself. It's just little by little, you don't do things all at one go. There's an odd saying my friend told me, how do you eat an elephant? Not all at once. It's like little bites, little bites. And I think that's how we all just need to tread sometimes, is just little by little. And it's not getting overwhelmed and looking at, you know, comparative photos on the internet about this whole bounce back culture is not healthy at all. Switching your phone off, have time with your new beautiful baby and your partner. Try to soak it up for what it is. It's a really hard time, but it's also really magical and really beautiful and goes so quickly. And going to a day spa or a facial, or meditating if that's your jam, going for a walk, spray, like it's all these little things I think that can just slowly build your confidence back up, are really important and often overlooked. It doesn't have to just be about fashion. It might just be a week of doing a couple of nice things for yourself, and then you have the confidence to go into a store, which you might not have had previously. But the easiest thing is to kind of figure out what you feel most comfortable in, and then if you can, buy something, when you treat yourself to something nicer of that object, which is always kind of a nice go-to, because it's always nice putting on something fresh and new and feeling like you've got a bit of spunk about it.
Yeah, I think it's really important to do some things for yourself during that time, because we can be just so hard on ourselves and get into a bit of a rut. But I like what you're saying. It doesn't need to be something huge. It can just be little small things.
I'm hearing lots and lots of self-care.
I think so. And self-care is really hard to do as a mother. It's hard to find time. And I'm learning this myself, the process of self-care. This week, for instance, my husband's taken the kids away, so I've had time to work, which, isn't usually a time of self-care, but just having time to think about how I need to prioritize myself a little bit better, so that I'm a better mom and a better wife. My kids, it's like women often do need to look after themselves so that they can then look after whoever else is in their care. Self-care is a big one, and I don't think we as women do it often enough.
Definitely. And sometimes it can feel like, when you're running through that big mental load list, like it's just another thing on the list. But I like what you were saying about carving out time to make the space to see what you need.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure. And we often surprise ourselves, I think, what can be done in time. I get quite fed up quite easily, and can be frustrated, and whether it's say things I don't mean, or it just kind of when it all boils up. But I think just before it gets to that point, taking a step back and having a breather, locking yourself in the pantry, whatever it is, but just getting that moment of time just to calm your cortisol back down and just reflect. And look, it isn't always possible to get that time to reflect and have self-care, yeah, even if it's just a moment in the car after you get the groceries before you go inside and just having a breather and like just anything that kind of fills your cup up is important to acknowledge and do if possible.
It's just those simple reminders sometimes. You just need to hear it one more time. And then it gets brought to the forefront and you're like, yes, I remember this. I need to go back to this, back to basics.
Yes, exactly. Back to basics completely.
There's so many things we want to ask, but can we pause for a sec? Can you tell us? So you've got a beautiful red jumper on and some denim. Can you tell us what you're wearing today?
This is a old Sir denim jacket, a henna cardigan just tucked over, and these are earrings. Of these Heaven Mayhem.
Heaven Mayhem. I'm saving that. Beautiful.
Yeah. Speaking of fashion and what you're wearing, I'm interested to know how your personal style evolved over your pregnancies.
It's a bit of a boring answer, really. So part of me really wants another baby so I can not be pregnant and enjoy the fashion, because I never actually got to experience that. So my first child, Johnny, who's now 6, I felt completely lost throughout the whole pregnancy. And that's when the INARRA idea, it's kind of pivoted and changed a few times, but the initial thought and seedling of the idea dropped and was born. But I didn't feel good about myself. I, as most women do, gained a fair bit of weight, kind of wasn't really exercising, probably wasn't eating the best either, was really not in my body, I feel, and so wasn't feeling good at all about what I was wearing. I almost just wanted to hide my body, and I found a few bits and pieces, but this was, even so much has changed in 6 years' time, and there wasn't really the knowledge about where to look, what looked good, the tight look I didn't feel comfortable in, and then didn't really know how to style and mix anything else. And it was during winter as well, so kind of just would clutter up a lot, if I'm perfectly honest. But I knew that something needed to change. I knew that I shouldn't be feeling like that, and I really wanted to love pregnancy, and I did love being pregnant. But there was all this change happening that I didn't know how to keep up with it, I suppose. My second pregnancy, I started doing at-home Pilates, really gentle exercise. I loved it. I really lent into my changing body, and learned to meditate, which was fantastic, and really felt connected to who I was. It was a really incredible experience. It was like chalk and cheese, my 2 pregnancies. However, it was COVID, and so we're in lockdown. So I pretty much lived in activewear and exercise clothes. So I had no reason to leave the house or, dress up or look good. My husband and I were saving for a house, so I wasn't really buying much. I didn't really have that experience of getting the bump out. Rihanna launched showing the bump, I think maybe a year after, which is when I think everything changed for pregnancy style and pregnancy fashion. And that's when the INARRA, I really dedicated time to that and was like, okay, I feel really passionate about this. I'm going to do something with it. So my pregnancies weren't that grand in terms of fashion. But in saying that, I learned a lot. I really learned that how you feel in your body definitely can reflect a lot upon your outside and how you choose to feel about yourself. It's very, telling those 2 different stories, it's very easy to go into that wanting to hide state and not really knowing how to dress. And there's also an educational piece, I think, around helping women feel their best self when they're pregnant, showing them how they can feel great when they're pregnant, and just guiding women who might not feel super confident with that styling space of being pregnant. So that's kind of what I learned from both pregnancies. But yeah, I think leaning into it. Our bodies know what to do, and I think just kind of looking after yourself is also really key, is what I learnt. I feel like I had better support around me my second time round. I dipped into postpartum depression with my eldest, so really made sure I was looking after myself with Alfie, my second baby, and just had so much of a different experience. And that's kind of when I was like, okay, I don't want women to go through what I went through with my first pregnancy. So that was my experiences, I suppose. We didn't really show that fashion too much there, but it kind of comes back to fashion.
Yeah, I can definitely relate to that with my first pregnancy. It was COVID at the time because she was born in 2021. So I was pregnant during 2020, all the lockdowns, but I hated my body changing. I just felt like I lost. I did not like seeing my body change. I just didn't feel like myself. And and I feel like fashion really, it's almost like not like a uniform that you wear. Like it's part of who you are. It's part of your self-expression. And when you can't do that how you normally would, it's really jarring because you can't control that you're pregnant. And then I would say afterwards, refinding what you feel comfortable wearing, because your body is different, but you also feel different. Like it's almost like, oh, I've got to be mature now. I've got to be a mum. I'm not
It's
the
a
same
weird feeling, isn't it?
It's very strange. Yes,
it is. It is for sure. Yes, it's you. There is this innate weird feeling that now you're a mum, you have to dress like a mum, which is like, it's a little bit pathetic, really. And it's like, what does a mum wear? It's a weird thing to navigate, because you're also navigating this whole new identity that you can't prepare for. I remember crying to my mom, being like, why didn't they teach you about postpartum at school? She's like, you wouldn't have listened, until you're in the thick of it. And even I'm sure you experience this too, Leah, when you're pregnant with your first. People can tell you to the cows come home, that you're in for a rough trot and, sleepless nights and whatever else. But until you're in it, you really don't understand the depths of it, I suppose.
Yeah. And I think the other piece of it is, which is really difficult during that time, is people constantly telling you how you look. Like, I know how I look. Like they'll comment on your size or your baby, or, whether it's big or small is uncomfortable. Or I hated people commenting on the way that I looked.
Absolutely. And people you feel as though people just think they have free reign to say whatever they wish when you're pregnant. You're so big, you're so small, oh, you're really that many weeks. It's like, leave me alone. I know. No, you don't feel like anything they can say will make you feel better. It's just best not to say anything at all sometimes.
Yes, I got to the point in my first pregnancy, I just didn't even want people to ask me how I was feeling. I'm like, you didn't normally ask me this. Just let me try to feel like normal. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Just hearing what your story with your pregnancies and not being able to express yourself in those times of I feel like we oftentimes look back and we're like, oh, I'm not really expressing myself as my authentic self, like how I really envision myself to be dressing or showing up every day. I feel like now we're really like harnessing the capsule wardrobe, and it's making it more accessible for us to dress a little bit more in line with how we want. So like having like those cute denim pieces, having your blazer, like making activewear look cool. Like there are things we can do in our day-to-day wardrobes that even like you've just thrown this gorgeous red sweater on and you look stunning. Like I love that. And it's something, you've had in your wardrobe, the denim for some time. So it's like now I feel like we're lucky, mothers that are planning or like recently have had a child. Like there are things we can do, especially like leaning into looser fitting garments.
Yeah, absolutely. Motherhood is having a real moment at the moment, and I think it's fantastic. I don't know, because I'm so ingrained in it, because I'm always thinking and breathing the INARRA. It's my third baby, so I'm seeing a lot of it. But I feel like there's a lot more education around motherhood in general. There's so many more postpartum services and support networks out there, I would say. But also from a fashion standpoint, there's so many amazing writers who have dedicated Substacks to motherhood fashion. There's content creators out there who are falling pregnant and, have huge followings. So it's kind of, there's more and more creeping up to the brim of it. And there's a lot of attention on it. I just think it's awesome. I think it's so great. And as you said, it's easily accessible for women to understand more about a capsule wardrobe. It doesn't have to be overly expensive, or you don't have to invest huge amounts of money into it. You just be a few key pieces that you can switch around on rotation, making getting dressed in the morning a little bit easier. And yeah, like winter can be fun. It's like the layering, putting trench coats over leggings and caps. There's some amazing dad caps out there. Your gold statement earring is so easy just to dress up any outfit. Adidas Sambas, and there's so many cool options out there at the moment in terms of capsule wardrobe dressing. And so even talking about mum dressing and what that looks like, that chicness of a capsule wardrobe very much emulates itself to mum dressing. And it's, blazers can go over anything. And there's a lot of fun to be had with mixing and matching. And even for those who are very new to what works well in a wardrobe and capsule wardrobe dressing, there's a lot of guidance out there, which is fantastic as well.
I also love, like, now, especially with pregnancies, there are so many cool accessories, like on-trend accessories. Like, you've included on your website, is it the Portier baby carrier in the hands too?
Yes.
Like, there are so many things you can add to your wardrobe to elevate that maternity look. So it doesn't have to be like boring, basic anymore.
No,
like,
not
we've
at
really
all.
leveled up.
Yeah, no, completely. Leah Domingo, who runs Portier, is beautiful. She's based in Melbourne, and just born out of this. The thing, I've met so many incredible women who are all mothers, mainly have just launched a product business out of the need of seeing a gap in the market that they didn't have when they were pregnant themselves. And that's kind of what Leah from Portier's story is. And they're absolutely beautiful. And she styles them so effortlessly. Her Instagram looks like a fashion catalog. It's really beautiful. You don't feel like, kind of gone are the days of daggy mum, I think. And it's not to say that I used to think that having a baby is just a nice little accessory, which is not the case at all. But they're very cute little accessories. But there's other things in life now that can make it a nice overall experience. There's beautiful baby bags and blankets and prams, and the list is endless. It's easy to get caught up in it all because it's also gorgeous.
Oh, and then not to mention the baby clothes and bows and
I know.
all of that.
Yes. Do you know what you're having, Leah, with this pregnancy?
Yes, I'm having another little girl.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you. Her name is
beautiful.
Her name is Florence. We're super excited. I'm also an interior architect, so styling the baby room has been really fun as well.
Oh, gorgeous.
gorgeous.
You're a busy woman.
She is.
Teaching, interior architect, mum of nearly 2, doing a podcast. What can't you do, girl?
Thank you.
Very impressive.
For real.
I want to go back to, why do you think our fashion style changes in postpartum? Why do you think you and I have felt that way? It's obviously common.
It's so common. I think, look, there's, scientific facts, around like hormones dropping, the baby blues come in, and there's no doubt that you drastically change as a woman during that first 6-week period. But also they say postpartum is classified technically up until around when your child's 7 years old, and no woman is ever really out of postpartum. We've all got children who grow older. We've all experienced it. But so like, I think there's the body and science behind it. There's no doubt that women significantly go through a very big change that isn't always positive. Then there's the sleep deprivation on top of that, which, you know, in itself, sleep deprivation is such a form of torture, and having to keep this little baby alive and also, you know, look after yourself in some format, have your partner and still trying to maintain a relationship with them that's functional. There's so many different elements from an outside perspective. Personally, I found it really hard getting boobs. I've got very small breasts naturally, and I found it a really big change having these huge big milk jugs, really. So that was really tricky to navigate. It's something I wasn't expecting. And dressing for a different body type is huge. You know, for our whole lives, we've kind of known what suits and what looks good, what we feel confident in, and then that changes overnight pretty much. But then also like looking at feeding and how you can easily integrate breastfeeding if you are breastfeeding into clothing accessibility. I think there's so many things that we put pressure on ourselves for. Looking back in time, and if I ever become pregnant again and go through the postpartum journey, I think planning is key, you know, and looking for comfortable pieces that are versatile but also make you feel good. It's a really tricky one to navigate, and I think coming back to self-love and self-care. But yeah, Lee, it's a really tricky one to answer. I don't think there's one pinpoint as to why fashion changes drastically during postpartum. I think it's quite a big range of reasons and factors.
Yeah, I definitely agree. But I just think having the conversation is important, even just so one other person who's going through it is like, oh, okay, this is normal. For me, it's almost like you're having this struggle between your previous identity and now this new identity that is emerging. And it's almost like you're mourning your previous self because so much of yourself is now being taken and given and used. You literally have had, like, if you've had a rough pregnancy, the life sucked out of you for 10 months, and then you give birth, which is insane. And then your hormones drop. They say it's like taking 100 birth control pills in the first 24 hours.
Wow.
And then a baby needs you to survive, whether you choose to breastfeed or
There's
not.
no catching up on sleep during that time.
No. So it's this transitional period. I like what you're saying, that it does take 6 to 7 years to feel somewhat leveling of yourself. So I think I've another 3 years to go.
For sure. I know. I actually only feel like I've maybe just recently found feel relatively normal again in myself. My hormones are pretty wild postpartum, and when I stopped feeding, I found a pretty big increase in how I was feeling. But then Alfie's nearly 4 this year, and I feel like I've kind of just got my groove. I've got my groove back now. You know, I feel like I've found who I am again, and but you know, everyone's so different, but I think talking about it is so important, and being vocal, getting help if you're really not coping, whatever form and shape that looks like. There's absolutely no shame in getting help. I think if it's there, take it. I think all the help, the better. It's just one step at a time sometimes as well, I think.
And I think Western culture has gone a little bit too far forward in, as you're saying, bounce back and having to do everything alone. I've been reading the First 40 Days book, and it goes through all about different cultures and how those first 6 weeks is sacred, and it's about caring and looking after the mother. And I think we're slowly starting to get back into that. And I think if we can do that better, then that postpartum is going to improve and people aren't going to feel so isolated and alone.
Absolutely, for sure. There's in all of Asian culture, they really nurture and look after the mother. It's such a big part of their upbringing in society. It really is that village aspect, and we don't have that here in Western culture. There's a beautiful girl who I've recently become aligned with, Avalon Nethery, who has launched Australia's first postpartum luxury retreat in Double Bay through the Intercontinental. And she has Chinese heritage and had two experiences. She's got two beautiful little girls and quite traumatic postpartum experiences, and just felt like something had to change. So she's on a really, really beautiful mission to change that. So any of your listeners who are pregnant, and definitely check out Born, BORNE. Yeah, there's beautiful things like that coming in, where it's just like taking it all back to the mother, the care of the mother. It's such a sacred time to really nurture them, on their new motherhood journey.
And I don't think it's about, it's actually scientific that time is really important for recovery. It's not that we're trying to glamorize it or make it more than it is. It is a really tough time. And if you don't get it right, it can lead to so many flow-on effects and conditions if it's not cared for.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was just chatting to Avalon on the phone the other day, and she quoted an insane stat to me that was something, I can't exactly remember the exact stats, but it was just saying that there's a huge majority of children who are at risk of anxiety and depression further down in their life if their mother has postnatal depression herself. So the flow-on effect mentally and fraternally is really quite scary.
Yeah.
We're doing like a motherhood series at the moment, and one of our previous guests actually mentioned the topic of self-care and like how important it is, because it's actually not the first couple of months when it hits you. I think it's on average 4 years after you've given birth that postpartum depression hits. And I thought that was really interesting to educate people on that, because you kind of think, it's right after. So even for those that don't have kids like myself, like just being conscious that it's not just the first year that's the hardest. It's, there's transitions that are continuous, and for mothers to know that as well, and just be aware and level up on that self-care in those periods to make sure that we're doing, just the little things that you can to make sure or avoid, where you can.
Completely. And it's so beautiful what you guys are doing and helping to, add to the awareness of motherhood and what all that it entails. And you're so right, we go through life as humans, so many different seasons. And I think, if you get through the baby and toddler season and you're feeling good, it might be when you return to work that things start to fall apart. And there's different stresses of life. It's a really tough time at the moment. Financially, for a lot of people, all of us, the world is a pretty tough place sometimes to live in, and financial stresses, having young kids, there's so many different elements that can lead to not feeling great, and in turn postpartum depression. So it's so great to continue to the conversation and raise awareness about it all, because the shame doesn't need to be associated with it whatsoever.
Before we move on to our acronym NAVA, I just want to plug the INARRA website, because it's so much more than just the fashion content. You've got some amazing stories on there from different women. Could you share a little bit about what our listeners could find?
Yeah, I'd love to. So on the INARRA, we have a breadth of lifestyle, fashion, and parenting beauty content. Essentially, I really wanted to hear how other mothers did it, how they navigated career, relationships, life, motherhood. So there's a really good snapshot of chatting to various women across various fields in there. Women who, there's lots of pretty photos, but there's some really, really gorgeous stories in there too, and lots of nuggets of gold from women who've got artists, movie producers, chefs, nutritionists, all different women from a diverse build, and it's been really incredible to build that part of the platform up. We have a shopping directory which you can shop by trimester for pieces that are on shelves now from all your favorite brands, which might be suitable for that particular trimester that you, or breastfeeding phase, postpartum phase that you are in. And then we have lots of beautiful parenting content. I've got an amazing team of writers who work for me, a couple of mothers themselves, so they are often relaying their own stories. Bella Brennan, who's a hilarious writer, she often has a hilarious sway on her words. So we do travel content. It's a really nice place to make a cup of tea and just scroll your laptop, your phone, whenever you have a spare 5 minutes, and hopefully it brings you a good amount of joy and inspiration.
It definitely does. All right, so Nava represents our core values that we explore in the podcast. Each letter represents an aspect of personal and professional growth. We've got navigate, aspire, value, and achieve. For navigate, can you share a time when you had to readjust your goals due to the demands of motherhood?
It happens pretty often. I think I set pretty firm goals for myself. I like to, kicking off the checklist, the to-do list. If you want like a real, I had a pretty big meeting a couple of weeks ago, and we're renovating at the moment. So we're staying in a house we weren't too familiar with. My son came down with croup in the middle of the night. This was a meeting I couldn't miss. My husband was away. My beautiful mum, drove down from the Central Coast by 9 a.m. to be there for my son. I had to, it was 15 minutes late and had to call, but it's just thinking on your toes and just, my mum is incredible. My family is incredible. My sister-in-law, I'm really grateful for the village I have around me. But more often than not, it's just navigating the kids and unexpected curveballs that life can throw at you. And in most circumstances, I think everyone will understand if it's a crisis. But it's just understanding, thinking on your feet. What can I do to get out of this situation and make the day still go ahead in some capacity?
Definitely. It is so tough. My husband is in Japan at the moment. And of course, whenever he goes away, my daughter either has hand, foot, and mouth, or is sick, or I'm sick, or she decides she's teething and not wanting to sleep. And it always happens when you don't want to.
I know. But hey, we're women, we can handle it.
Unfortunately.
Oh dear, I know, right?
A is for aspire. What advice would you give to mothers who are hesitant to pursue their dreams due to the responsibilities of parenting and situations like all the things that you guys have just mentioned that you've overcome by some type of miracle and inner strength?
Yeah. Mine's pretty simple. I would say go for it. This life we live is so short. If you have an idea, something that you want to pursue, whether it's a passion project, a side hustle, whatever it is, if it brings you happiness, do it. You will never regret trying. The worst that can happen is it doesn't work. If someone says no, you get back. You're always going to learn something from it. You're always going to have a takeaway. There is no better time, I felt, to start something that you're passionate about with small children, because the limited time you have, you work so bloody hard on it. And they're your reason for wanting to follow your dream, to follow your passion. Ultimately, if your dream is to build a better life for your family, or, whatever it might be. But I think the end result of proving to yourself that you can work a full-time job, give this side hustle a go, and be a mum, like, it's a lot to juggle, but my God, you feel good about it. You feel really good, and life's just too short not to give it a shot. Don't be so hard on yourself. Just give it a shot.
And you'll always learn something either way.
Always. Yeah.
How do you teach your little boys the importance of self-worth and taking care of themselves?
I just always trying to instill them to be kind. I think it's this beautiful book we've got, which we read quite often. You're the boss of your own body, and it kind of, it teaches them about boundaries and their own self worth, but also I think showing your love, you're showing yourself self love is so key, and you can't really, no one can love anyone else unless you love yourself. And so teaching them a lot of self worth, self kindness, setting boundaries, but also just wanting them to be the best person they can be. So reading really beautiful books to them, breaking up fights. There's a lot of, and just saying, how would you feel if Johnny did that to you, or if Alfie did that to you, and how can we move forward in this situation? And just being gentle with them, but also, I think being forward, and that there's being kindness is the most important thing in this world. Yeah.
That's beautiful. Lastly, as a mother and business owner, what actions have you taken personally to achieve your goals in both areas with the many hats that you've been putting on?
I asked for help. It's been pretty nerve-wracking to have this idea when the INARRA was just an idea and I tell people about it. I found really quite nerve-wracking. I've grown up quite perfectionist, I would say, and I've always found it quite daunting to put yourself in the line and be quite vulnerable. Vulnerability has been a huge one for me to take on feedback, to learn and to grow, to use my beautiful network of friends and family for feedback. I would say just put your ego out the door, be raw, be vulnerable, and just be a sponge, soak up as much goodness and feedback, whether it be good or bad, as possible, and not take offense to anything. Sometimes harder said than done, but you've just got to keep learning. I think it comes back to that, and I think that sometimes can also relate to motherhood. Not comparing to how other people are parenting their children. I know what's best for my family and for me. Also reminding myself of some of the things I tell my kids, how to live their lives, probably to sometimes remember as well myself. I think kids are our biggest teachers in that. But yeah, I think in essence, opening your heart to both. I think being vulnerable, not being afraid of what people think of you. Again, easier said than done, but just, be willing to be the best version of yourself. And I think vulnerability can sometimes open those doors and crack open a piece of us, which people often don't see. And I think it's a really beautiful thing to be vulnerable.
It really is. Thank you for sharing your vulnerability and your stories with us today. We've absolutely loved it, and we know that our listeners would have absolutely loved it too. So thank you.
Well, thank you for having me. It's been an honor. I think you girls are wonderful, and I'm really, really thrilled to be a part of your beautiful podcast. So thank you for having me.
That's a wrap for this episode. If you enjoyed this conversation, please subscribe, rate, and leave a review.
And remember, you can always find more episodes and updates on our website and social media page. You can find us on Instagram at Nava.podcast. Until next time,
keep chasing your dreams and making your mark on the world.